Good evening, United Women in Faith. What an absolute honor it is to be here with you tonight, gathered under the theme, Leading to Inspire in a Post-Resurrection World. This theme resonates so deeply with me, not just in my faith, but in my life and work. Work that has taught me about perseverance, hope, and the power of rising from the darkest of places. As I reflect on today's scripture, I'm drawn to Mary Magdalene. She stood outside that tomb early in the morning in the grip of grief and despair. She had every reason to give up, to believe the story was over, and yet she stayed. She searched. She allowed herself to hope, even when hope felt impossible. And in that persistence, she witnessed the ultimate resurrection. What does this look like in today's world? Is it the freedom of a formerly incarcerated mother reuniting with her child after years apart? Is it the courage to hope when the odds are stacked against you? Tonight, I want to take you on a journey of what leading in a post-resurrection world means to me in action. I've had my own moments of standing outside tombs, moments when the darkness seemed impenetrable, when hope was hard to hold on to. I remember one of those moments so vividly. It was during my work with my client, Sharonda Jones, a mother and small business owner from Texas who had been sentenced to life without parole for a federal drug offense. It was her first ever conviction. I had come across Sharonda's case as a law student, writing a research paper about race and the law. And it was just something about her case that tugged at my soul. I wrote her a letter. I told her I was a law student and I knew next to nothing about criminal law, but that I wanted to help her get out of prison. Sharonda and I formed a bond, and I represented Sharonda pro bono for 6 years, walking alongside her in her fight for freedom. I soon realized that clemency from President Obama was her only hope. Sharonda was so positive, even in the face of adversity that would be unbearable for many of us. But as time stretched on, I could see the weight of her life sentence starting to crush even her remarkable strength. One day during a prison visit, Sharonda, a woman who's always so hopeful, so resilient, she broke down in tears. She told me she was starting to feel the weight of the life sentence in her bones. I could see her pain, her exhaustion, her weariness, and honestly, I felt it too. I had filed her clemency petition in November of 2013, and it had been pending 2 years at this point. A decision with Sharonda's life on the line, hanging in limbo. In that moment in that visit room, sitting across from Sharonda, I wondered, can I really do this? Can I actually help free her? Or had I gotten Sharonda's hopes up only to let her down? The burden of a prison sentence weighs on everyone fighting alongside them. And on those dark days, not giving up was all I had. But just like Mary Magdalene stayed by the tomb, even when it seemed hopeless, I stayed. We prayed. We refused to give up, even when the answers didn't come right away, because sometimes faith is just holding on when everything else tells you to let go. And then, just a few weeks after that challenging visit, Sharonda's resurrection came. In the late 90s, she had been sentenced to life with no possibility of parole. But in 2016, after serving 16 years and 9 months, she was granted clemency by President Barack Obama, and she walked out of that prison a free woman. Seeing her reunite with her daughter, her family, it reminded me of what leading in a post-resurrection world truly looks like. It's not just rising from despair, but rising into purpose, into the fullness of what God has planned for us. Sharonda's story and stories like hers have taught me that resurrection, it's more than a moment. It's a journey that calls us to lead and inspire. And leading in this world is about standing outside the tomb, believing that life can emerge from death, that justice can emerge from injustice. It's about refusing to give up, even when the burden feels unbearable. And it's this spirit of taking the hope from resurrection and turning it into action that inspires others, that drives my own work. First through Girls Embracing Mothers and now Manifest Freedom. It's a belief that no matter how dark the night, dawn always comes. The journey to resurrection begins in the shadows. And for me, that journey took shape in founding Girls Embracing Mothers, or GEM. GEM was inspired by a profound belief that in a post-resurrection world, even the most challenging circumstances, a mother's love and presence can lead to transformation and healing, not just for her children, but for herself. When I first started visiting prisons, it was to visit my own mother. Even as a young adult, my mother's incarceration was devastating. It's hard having any loved one in prison. But I can tell you through my own firsthand experience that when it's your mama, it is a primal wound. I was struck by the stories of women in prison who were mothers, women who, despite the pain of separation, longed to stay connected to their children. For daughters especially, the absence of a mother's guidance, it leaves scars that can last a lifetime. And so I saw the need for a bridge, something that could bring these women and their daughters together, even in the face of incarceration. And so GEM became that bridge. And through our program for the past 11 years, we've brought daughters into prisons, loving beyond bars, giving them space to rebuild their relationships with their mothers. We provided more than just a visit. We provide healing justice. It was about restoring dignity, creating moments of connection, and reminding these women and their daughters of the power of unconditional love. I'll never forget one visit with Angelica. She was one of our first GEM moms who was in prison and had been separated from her daughter, Jalissa, for several years. Jalissa was so angry at first, angry at the system, at the circumstances, and even at her mom. She would hardly even look or speak to her mother during those first visits. But after a few visits, something broke open during an art therapy activity. Jalissa looked to her mother and asked her for help with the craft. And I remember Angelica breaking down in tears, and I remember her hugging Jalissa, and I heard her say, "Jalissa, I know I've made mistakes, but I'm still here for you, and I always will be." And from then on, an incredible, unbreakable bond was created and was just miraculous to witness. That day marked the beginning of a resurrection for the both of them. Their bond, which had been bruised but not broken, began to heal. And as Jalissa grew older, she began to see her mom not as someone defined by her mistakes, but as a woman of strength and love. This is the kind of transformation GEM created, reviving hope where there was once pain, restoring relationships that felt irreparably broken, and showing mothers and daughters that they could rise together. But the work wasn't always easy. There were moments when I questioned if it was enough. How could we truly break cycles of incarceration and trauma if the systems that created them remained unchanged? How could we help those families rise beyond the limitations imposed upon them? And so those questions pushed me to dream bigger. GEM planted the seed for something greater. It showed me the power of resurrection as a force for healing, a force for love, and a force for justice. This is the legacy of GEM, an organization that I'm proud to announce will be sunsetting later in 2025, but its mission will be continuing through the work of Janie's Angels, led by Angelica, who was released from prison in 2016 and served as GEM's program director after her release. Just like the story of resurrection didn't end at the empty tomb, Jim's story is only the beginning of a larger movement, a movement to bring light into the darkest corners of our society and to remind us all that we are capable of rising. As Jim grew, so did my understanding of what was needed to create lasting change. The work continues to be meaningful, but it became clear to me that if we were going to address the root causes of injustice, we had to think bigger, much bigger. It is not enough to only mend relationships one at a time. We must simultaneously tackle the systems that broke those relationships in the first place. And that realization led to the birth of my new initiative, Manifest Freedom, a vision to harness the power of imagination to drive both personal and societal transformation. Through economic justice, advocacy, and reshaping narratives, Manifest Freedom challenges the stories that uphold injustice and offers us a bold new look of what freedom can look like. And one way we're doing this is through storytelling and the art. And this excites me because stories have the unique ability to change hearts and minds, confront people with uncomfortable truths, and inspire action. That belief inspired my book, A Knock at Midnight, the story of hope, justice, and freedom. And it drives Manifest Freedom's upcoming art exhibition titled No Crystal Stair. This exhibition will serve as a living testament to the resilience, creativity, and ingenuity that thrive even under oppressive conditions. Another way is through economic justice. Take Sharonda, a restaurant owner before incarceration with an undeniable passion for cooking. Even during her life sentence, Sharonda's drive and creativity couldn't be stifled. In prison, she became renowned for her ability to create culinary delicacies from limited ingredients. From tamales made with crushed corn chips to red hot chicken meatballs made with Doritos, Sharonda brought joy to the other women in prison with her culinary genius. She guards her recipes so closely, so don't ask me how she did it, because when a friend asked her what she put in her mac and cheese, Sharonda said, cheese. She guards her recipes with her life. Imagine what someone like Sharonda, able to innovate under the most inhumane conditions, could achieve if given the tools to thrive and not just survive. This is why true freedom must be multidimensional. And I lay this vision out in my TED Talk. And I'm excited to say with Grant Capital for Manifest Freedom, Sharonda recently launched her food truck company called Fed Up, which is entirely staffed by formerly incarcerated people. It's a tangible example of what happens when we reimagine justice as restoration and not punishment, providing people with the tools to rewrite their stories and reclaim their futures. But this work isn't just for the people we serve, it's for all of us. Just as Jesus' resurrection was such a blessing for the world, the work of revival and justice has the power to lift us all. Because when we raise up the most marginalized among us, we all rise. I think of Mary Magdalene standing at the tomb in her grief, unable to recognize the risen Jesus until he called her by name. That's what resurrection does. It calls us by name, reminding us of who we are and what we are capable of. And that's what Manifest Freedom seeks to do, to call people out of the tombs of despair, invisibility, and hopelessness, and into a world where they are seen, valued, and free. So what does that look like for you? How can you embody this spirit of resurrection in your own life, in your family, or in your community? Here are 3 ways that I think are great ways to start. 1, you can revive hope through connection. Countless young people and families feel forgotten, especially in today's times. much like the women and children I've worked with through GM. You can remind them their story isn't over. Volunteer at a local school, visit a prison, support organizations like GM to provide for gifts for children with incarcerated parents during the holidays, or simply reach out to someone who needs encouragement. Just one relationship can change a life. You can also lead by advocating for justice. The systems that create cycles of incarceration and poverty, they didn't appear overnight, and they won't change without action. Use your voice to push for laws and policies that restore instead of punish. Write letters to your representatives, support organizations fighting for justice reform, or join local efforts to address systemic issues in your communities like housing and education and employment. And lastly, you can also invest in second chances. When we give people the tools to thrive, we help them rewrite their stories. And so you can support businesses that hire formerly incarcerated individuals or provide grants and resources to entrepreneurs who are rebuilding their lives from prison. As I start to close, I'm once again drawn back to the story of Mary and reminded again that Mary's story doesn't end at the empty tomb. It begins there, and so does ours. Mary's encounter with the risen Christ transformed her from a grieving follower to the first apostle of the resurrection. She ran to tell the others, "I have seen the Lord." Her testimony sparked a movement that would change the world. This, my dear friends, is what leading in a post-resurrection world looks like. It's a call to action, a responsibility to lead with courage and to inspire others to rise alongside us. It's about letting personal transformation ripple out to transform communities, systems, and lives. And when I think of resurrection, I think of Sharonda stepping into freedom and reuniting with her daughter. I think of Jalissa holding her mother's hand, creating beauty out of brokenness. And I think of the countless men and women who dared to believe their story wasn't over, that even in the darkest places, hope can rise. And I think of you. I think of you because you have that same power, the power to rewrite stories, to restore hope, and to lead with courage. Whether it's by donating your resources and time, whether it's speaking out against injustice, or whether it's simply showing love to someone who feels unseen, your actions matter. And together we can be the spark in our families, our communities, and our world. I am so grateful. I am so grateful to our Heavenly Father for the gift of resurrection, the reminder that hope is never lost and that His light can pierce even the darkest places. I pray that God continues to strengthen our hearts, renew our spirits, and help us see the world with love, compassion, and boundless possibility. Thank you so much for allowing me to share my journey with you this evening. In a post-resurrection world, let's not just reflect on transformation. Let's lead and create it. Let's rise together and build a world where everyone has the chance to step into the fullness of their God-given potential. Thank you all so much.